we officially have some of the earliest polls in the 2025 Virginia governor's race, as the election is about a little over 10 months away. This race is going to get very close, and this will be the start, I'm sure, of many polls to come, but I wanted to go over this video, show you what we know so far about this race, some polls, and some election results, just to give a quick little update for this video. So, just weeks after former Abigail Spanberger left the U.S. House for good, she strolled onto the floor of a different political chamber, the Virginia House of Delegates. The three-term congresswoman, now vying to be the state's next governor, rubbed elbows with fellow Democrats and held someone's baby at her hip, a not-so-subtle reminder that statewide elections are looming in the Commonwealth this year. Obviously, if you've been following elections, you know the 2024 elections just happened, but the way that Virginia and New Jersey, two states, operate their election systems, they have their governor election the first year election after the presidential elections. So obviously, this is 2025. Virginia and New Jersey will both be having their governor's elections. And the leading candidates, as this article goes into more detail, the leading candidates right now are the Lieutenant Governor of Virginia, Republican Winsome Sears, and the Democratic leading candidate right now is former Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger, who just recently left the U.S. House as she did not run for re-election for this term, instead decided to run and focus all of her attention on running for governor in 2025. I'm sure a lot of people in Virginia are feeling a little bit of fatigue from the 2024 election, yet the 2025 election is about to hit the ground running very, very soon. And the article just provides some background information about the two candidates. If you want to pause and read this, you absolutely can. If not, I've done more in-depth videos for both Winsome Sears and Abigail Spanberger about who they are and sort of their background as well. If you want more of that information, you can check that out on my channel after this video as well. But that's not really the purpose of today's video. The purpose of today's video is to look at some of the earliest polling data we have right now in the state of Virginia and what's been released so far. On the Wikipedia page right now, there have been a few polls that have been released. Some of them are from bigger polling names, some of them are not. For instance, Coefficient, a Republican leaning poll, really not too well known that I'm aware of. It shows a close race, about a 1-point race with a lot of undecided vote. Certainly that one suggests it is an outlier. Research America Inc. This one I have heard before. This is a tied race in this poll, 22% undecided. In Mason-Dixon Polling Strategy, this is a very popular polling firm, I believe, in the state of Virginia. I know when I was covering the 2021 Virginia governor election, this polling firm came up a lot. It shows Abigail Spanberger leading Winsome Sears 47% to 44% with 9% undecided. That is worth noting. At +3, that is within the poll's 4-point margin of error. Emerson College, probably the highest, most well-known nationally polling source in all these polls conducted so far, has Abigail Spanberger leading Winsome Sears 42% to 41% with 17% undecided, obviously well within the poll's 3% margin of error. Christopher Newport University has Abigail Spanberger leading Winsome Sears 44 to 39 with 18% undecided. This is the first poll I believe to be outside of the margin of error for Spanberger over Sears. Virginia Commonwealth University has Spanberger leading Sears 44% to 34%. That is a 10-point lead, also outside of the margin of error. And the Coefficient polls back once again, showing a tied race 40-40 with 20% undecided. So in the earliest polls we've had so far, what are the main notable takeaways? Well, for one thing, the only two polls I'm really confident in personally are from polling sources that I've really recognized and heard from before, are Emerson College and Mason-Dixon Polling and Strategy. These are the three polling sources that I'm the most familiar with, and that if I had to trust any of these polls, I would trust these two the most. Obviously, though, these two are both universities in the state of Virginia, so at very least you would think they would have a trustworthy source, maybe more on the ground than maybe some of the national polls, but right now the trust I would give mostly goes to Emerson and Mason-Dixon. And both of them show something that's actually pretty consistent, which is right now it is a very close race. Both polls are under the margin of error, which means they would be considered a statistical tie, though Abigail Spanberger, the Democratic candidate, is leading Winsome Sears, the Republican lieutenant governor, in both of these polls. Another thing that's pretty clear in this race right now is it's still very early on, and there's a lot of undecided vote. And you may be asking, okay, why is there so much undecided vote? And it could be a situation of the race is very early on. Not many people in Virginia are paying attention with. Typically, they say in elections, it's usually around Labor Day and later on, leading through the first week of November. That's when people really start paying attention to the upcoming elections. Unless you're really interested in elections and politics like I am, you're not really going to be looking at this stuff even in January or February in the state of Virginia unless you're already really interested and passionate about it. So it could just be a situation where a lot of people in Virginia are not familiar with these candidates yet because they have not really taken the time to be well versed and well known about who these people are. Abigail Spanberger, being a U.S. representative, she likely, even though Winsome Sears is the lieutenant governor of Virginia, both of them have been elected, I guess you could say, statewide. Sears for lieutenant governor, Spanberger for Congress. So both of them sort of have that advantage of being elected before. That's very important when you want to get into terms of like candidate quality. Having past electoral experience for both candidates certainly benefits them both. Right now, it shows, yes, Spanberger is leading, but it also shows a very tight race that you could consider a tie. So right now, the early polls are showing that Spanberger has about a 1 to 2 point lead, though that could very much evaporate overnight. Of course, this is getting very far into the future, but depending on good voter turnout by, say, the Republicans over the Democrats, Winsome Sears could easily win this race. Good voter turnout on the Democratic side shows Abigail Spanberger could easily win this race. So my official idea or synopsis for this race right now is that it's going to be the first major elections after the 2024 presidential elections. Virginia and New Jersey are typical repudiations on the current administration in power at the time. Typically, the party that's in the White House does not typically fare too well in the governor elections in Virginia and New Jersey. At least historically, that's how that works. For instance, I'll give a little quick trip down memory lane before going more in depth with the results. If you want to look here, we can look at 2021. Joe Biden was elected president in 2020. The state of Virginia voted for Republican Glenn Youngkin for governor by 1.9%. It was a very close race in Virginia, which at the time used to be a Republican state, turned into a swing state, and started looking like more of a likely Democratic state, even safe Democratic state at some points in 2020. It elected a Republican governor in 2021. New Jersey was only a 3.2% win for the Democrat, and very Democratic New Jersey. Maybe that was a sign of things to come in the 2024 presidential election, but that's what happened here. You want to look back at 2017, of course, Donald Trump was elected president, and the governor elections in this election were repudiations on the president, Donald J. Trump. Virginia voted for the Democratic candidate Ralph Northam by 8.9%, a likely Democratic win. New Jersey voted for the Democrat Phil Murphy by 14.1%. You want to go back to 2013, it's not going to be exactly the same because in here, the Democrat Terry McAuliffe was able to win over his Republican opponent, though it is worth noting that there was a third-party Libertarian candidate that did take up 6% of the vote. And if you would have to ask the question, had the Libertarian candidate not run, would the Republican Ken Cuccinelli have been able to win this race? My gut instinct says he probably would have. Libertarian voters seem to split a little bit more towards the Republicans than Democrats in a lot of these close elections, but that is always up for debate on that. But New Jersey did elect Republican Chris Christie, or re-elect in this situation, and that's what unfolded there. So you can see the off parties typically favored in these elections. As for what that means for 2025 for Virginia, well, that would suggest that Abigail Spanberger, the Democratic candidate, would be more inclined to win, given that President Trump is in the Oval Office, and that typically bodes well for the Democratic Party, the party that's not in power. It could also be worth noting that Governor Glenn Youngkin is a Republican representing Virginia right now. He is term limited by Virginia's Constitution and cannot run for a second consecutive term in the state of Virginia. He can let 4 years go by after this and run again in 2029 if he wants to, but he cannot serve two back-to-back consecutive terms per Virginia's Constitution. But it is also worth noting the recent Morning Consult polls does show Glenn Youngkin's approval rating actually being pretty high. I'm going to pull that up for you right now. So looking here, it's a little hard to see because the thing on the screen, I can't really get it off. I'm trying to get off the screen, but I cannot. Right now, if you look here in Virginia, right now the net approval rating for Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin is right now plus 21. So Youngkin is enjoying very, very strong numbers in the state of Virginia, which that may bode well. That may bode well for Winsome Sears. But it is also the national environment is going against the Republicans' way, but Youngkin's approval rating in office is something going for Winsome Sears. So this election, I think, is going to be very fascinating, and I think it's going to be one that is actually very close and goes down to the wire, very similar to the Youngkin-McAuliffe one, because you have Youngkin's approval rating really boosting Winsome Sears' chances of winning, while at the same time, the national environment suggests this should be Abigail Spanberger's race to lose. And what the reality is right now, very early on, a lot can change from now till November, is a very, very close race that's well within the margin of error. And though the early polls suggest it looks like Spanberger has a slight lead of about 1 to 2 percentage points, depending on the poll, it certainly shows essentially a under the margin of error race, which means statistically it could really go either way. Just to give you some brief election results about the state of Virginia, in the past 2024 presidential election, we did see Vice President Kamala Harris win the state of Virginia and its 13 electoral votes, 52% to 46% over Donald Trump. And this is actually one of the best jobs Trump has done. He might have even done better than he did in 2016, but he definitely did better than he did here in 2020. And I'm going to point out some areas that are very important to watch for. In Virginia, if you watch my channel before, you'll know these areas very, very well. Up here is the northern suburbs right outside of Washington, D.C. D.C. is going to be about right here. And these three suburbs make up a huge percentage of the population of Virginia. And as Virginia went from being a Republican state to a toss-up state and to eventually a likely Democratic state, these three counties, Loudoun County, Fairfax County, and Prince William County, are a huge reason why, as well as inner city Alexandria as well. These three counties are a huge reason why. If you, for instance, just give you a hypothetical example, if you were to take these three counties out of the state of Virginia, it would probably either be tied or the Republicans would win it close to every single time. But the population growth outside of Washington, D.C. in these three counties have really turned Virginia into the likely Democratic state that we see now. Still, a 6-point race here was very competitive in Virginia. We saw Loudoun County go 17 points for Kamala Harris, Fairfax 66-31 for Harris over Trump, and Prince William 58-40. So again, keep an eye on these numbers because I'm going to compare it to the 2021 governor's race, and you're going to see why Glenn Youngkin was able to win a very close race, whereas President Trump narrowly lost a likely Democratic race. Before moving on, though, there is something very important to mention as well. This is the Virginia Beach area down here. This is typically an area where if Republicans are doing well in the state of Virginia and are winning the state of Virginia, you're likely going to be seeing Virginia Beach going red. You may even see Chesapeake County going red as well. The city of Richmond is right here. A huge population of Democratic votes will come out of here as well. And the city of Norfolk surrounds here. But especially if you're looking at the electoral significance, I'm watching Chesapeake and Virginia Beach very, very closely. So that was Virginia in 2024. I'm now going to show you the 2021 governor's map. Glenn Youngkin won statewide 50.6% to Terry McAuliffe's 48.7%, approximately a 2-point win statewide. And look what I just told you about the Virginia Beach area. Trump lost it in 2024 by about 4 points. Glenn Youngkin, when he won the governor's race in 2021, Youngkin won Virginia Beach by about 8%. He won Chesapeake County by about 6 to 7%. So again, when a Republican is doing well in the state of Virginia, you're going to be seeing Virginia Beach and Chesapeake County likely going red and by a likely Republican margin. So that's a very important area to watch for. That's very significant for the electoral prospects of Winsome Sears in 2025, Virginia Beach and Chesapeake County. Now let's take a look at the northern D.C. suburbs, Loudoun County, Prince William County, and Fairfax County. Again, here, Terry McAuliffe won Loudoun County by 11 points over Glenn Youngkin, an 11-point win. Well, you may say, well, how's that good? He lost it by 11 points. Again, Donald Trump just lost it by 17. So Glenn Youngkin did about 6% better in Loudoun County, in one of the largest population counties in the state. That means there's less Democratic votes. If you compare the numbers or the percentages in the off-year elections, there's going to be less voter turnout than there would be in a presidential election. But the percentages going down also significantly helped Glenn Youngkin win by reducing the numbers in Loudoun County. Now let's look at Prince William. It voted for McCall at 57 to 42.2. let's look at 2024. It was 58-40, about a 1 to 2 point improvement there for Youngkin over Trump as well. And lastly, Fairfax, 66-31 for Harris over Trump. In 2021, it was 65-34.1. So what's that going to be? About 30 points, about a 30-point difference, and then here is about a 35-point difference. So again, Republicans do not need to win these counties to win the state of Virginia, but they do need to do better than President Trump did in 2024 and run around the same numbers that Glenn Youngkin did in 2021. So that's very fascinating. I really want to point that out. Coupled with the latest polls that have been put out right now, I just want to give you a brief little look back at where things were. For the 2021 governor's race, it did not go that far back. It only went back to June for the earliest polls after the primaries were settled. But back then, Terry McAuliffe was leading over Glenn Youngkin, so the Democrat did have the early advantage in those polls, and it only really started to evaporate in about the last few weeks of the campaign. We started seeing more polls be more competitive, and then Youngkin started to lead in most of the final polls leading into Election Day, though it was still very close with 2 polls showing it to be a very close race. So if the 2021 governor's race in Virginia is any indication, if the polls go this way, it's going to be a complete jump ball heading into Election Day if it continues to go this way. But I do have another one to show you with just for comparison's sake. This was 2017, and again, going back to about the summer, there were some polls of the earlier candidates as well that did not win the primary that may give a little bit of insight. But of the leading candidates, back in July, the Republican was actually leading for a while. The Republican was leading over the Democratic candidate. Then the Democrats started to pick up some steam, and then he started winning the polls. And I don't think we saw the Republican lead again until about the middle of October. But the Democrat really started to pull ahead in a lot of these polls. And typically in a race like this, when the Democrat's leading by a lot and consecutively, like 9 out of every 10 polls goes for one party, it's more likely than not that's going to happen. As that pertains for 2025, why am I bringing this up, is right now, of all the polls that have been done, every single poll, even though, yes, there's only 2 I really consider like strongly reputable, every single poll has had the Democratic candidate Spanberger either winning or tied with the Republican, which is not probably great news for either candidate. They'd obviously rather be ahead, but right now, I'd say that a narrow advantage goes for the Democrats over the Republicans right now, given the little bit of an early lead the Democrats are getting in the polls. Obviously, months away from the election, not many people are tuning into this race yet, so does this really matter? No, but the polls can change any second. People can start paying attention any second, but right now, it'd be a very, very early advantage in this race for the Democrats, and I would probably start this race out as a lean Democratic governor's race in Virginia right now. I hope you enjoyed this video. These have been the first polls for the 2025 Virginia governor's race. Make sure to give the video a like and click subscribe. Leave a comment below telling me what you thought of this video and how you think the Virginia governor's race is going to go. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in a future video. That will do it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to give it a like. And if you really liked it, please remember to click the subscribe button. And make sure you turn post notifications on so you always get notified when I post a new video. That way you never miss one. Also, please remember to share this video with your friends and family if you really, really, really like the video. And remember to stay tuned because I'll be posting at least one video every single day leading up until Election Day. So I'd really appreciate it if you keep coming back and watching those videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in a future video.